Hi, my name is Jay Burney, and I'm starting a series of online discussions and interviews that I hope to bring to you during this time of horrible crisis that the world is undergoing with the coronavirus issues that we're all facing. We're all facing self-isolation. So there will be a series of people that we'll be talking to and that will help us all cope and maybe learn about what's going on around us while we are basically in our homes. So today we're with Jajean Rose Burney, who is the Deputy Director of the Western New York Land Conservancy, which is a very important organization in the Western New York area. We'll be talking about that. He's also a very avid birder. He was our keynote speaker at the 2020 Birds on Niagara Festival held on Valentine's Day of this year. And he's a relative. He's my son. So we have a couple of bonuses here today for me anyway. So Jajean, how are you doing? How are you coping? We're in difficult times. I know that our businesses are impacted and our personal lives are impacted. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, actually. Fortunately, I'm able to continue working at home. So everyone at the Land Conservancy is still working remotely. A lot of our work continues. Just we're not doing our, in-person hikes and volunteer events, but everything else seems to be going well for us. And and I've just been working at home, but also getting out after work and on weekends, hiking, finding new places. Places where there aren't that many people. Canada Way Wildlife Management Area in Fredonia. I took a hike there 3 weeks ago. We're in the Gorge last weekend. Went Beach and Bennett Beach, places I just don't normally go to as often. So that's how I've been getting through it. Going outside, hiking nature trails and things like that.
Well, a lot of times being outdoors, especially in our family, is a kind of a social event. We're missing each other. We're not seeing each other. And it's kind of hard to be out there by yourself, but it's important to get out there. And I'm glad that you're doing it. I'm doing it also. Let's talk about what's going on with bird world right now. It is mid-April. We have things like the neotropical migration we're on the cusp of. We're starting to see some warblers. What's going on out there in the birds in Western New York?
Yeah, this is kind of my favorite time of the year for bird watching in Western New York. Starting to get into the first couple of weeks of May is what I look forward to. That 2 weeks every year. Over the last month or so, there's been a lot of waterfowl migrations, ducks. I went to Iroquois a couple weeks ago, the wildlife management, the National Wildlife Refuge, and saw some great, all the water, gadwalls, widgeons, shovelers, even a Eurasian widgeon, which is only the second time I've ever seen a Eurasian widgeon in the U.S. So this is a bird from Europe that sometimes finds its way accidentally into the U.S. There's a Eurasian widgeon there. I do the Hamburg Hawk Watch for the Buffalo Ornithological Society. So I had a couple days where we were basically watching hawks as they migrate back north. And it's really interesting how they come in. They congregate further south of Buffalo, and they sort of, once they get to Hamburg, close to the lake, they kind of follow a line. And they get together, they form these big kettles, they circulate up into the hot air currents, and then they get high, and then they fly straight, and they're all going north. So, one day we had 500 turkey vultures, a lot of sharp-shinned hawks and Cooper's hawks. Someone 2 days ago had a Swainson's hawk, which I think is only the second record of a Swainson's hawk in Western New York. So it's a really cool thing. A lot of these birds are coming from South America, Central America, American South, and just finding their way up towards our area, New York State, Canada. Over the last week, common loons and horned grebes have started coming back north. So both are going to be going further north to nest. They nest on lakes, and the loons, you see them in the Adirondacks, up to Algonquin, those ponds up there. But they've started migrating back north. And so, we had a winter storm over the last couple of days. I think a lot of the loons and horned grebes that might have kept going further north stopped because they hit the storm. And so you'll see them up the coast of Buffalo, the Outer Harbor, Niagara River, Lake Ontario, even ponds inland. So that's a lot of people have been seeing loons. And then over the next couple of weeks, you're going to start getting all these warblers, which is really what I look forward to the most. These, 30 some species of these little tiny birds, full of colors, just a lot of variety. And a lot of people don't even know we have this incredible variety of all these little colorful birds. But things like Blackburnian warblers, black-throated blue warblers, and common yellowthroats, Nashville, where it's incredible. So over the next couple of weeks, especially once you get into the first weekend, second weekend of May, you just start getting these huge waves of migratory. They're songbirds, and they're coming. Again, these are coming from South America and Central America. They're passing through Puerto Rico. They're crossing the Gulf of Mexico. You can see them on radar. These little songbirds. They migrate at night, and so you see these all across the East Coast. As soon as sun sets, you watch the National Weather Service radar online. You can see these. They look like balloons. Just essentially these birds lifting off at dusk and then flying all night north. And you can see, even on radar, you can see these clouds of birds flying from Cuba to Florida and then taking off from the Keys and going further north. And in our area, you can see them, around dusk, maybe 9 o'clock on these radar. You can see these just blooms of birds taking off. And you can even see them start crossing Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. And, as soon as these warblers arrive, places like Tiff Nature Preserve, Forest Lawn Cemetery in Buffalo, Amherst State Park, anywhere along the coast, the shore of Lake Ontario or Lake Erie, really, if you get some forested areas, vegetation, these are great places to go and just, watch, tons of, colorful little songbirds.
The Buffalo Ornithological Society recently did a count, and I know that you had a territory, which was basically the outer harbor, and I think you reported that you saw over 40 species, including sandhill cranes flying overhead. What else did you see at Times Beach 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was a fun time at Times Beach. I think most of the trails are still, they're still not open just because of the storm damage over the winter, but where we were able to go, a lot of sparrows, actually. We didn't talk about the sparrows. Sparrows are kind of, not the easiest birds to necessarily identify, but there's a big diversity of sparrows that come through. And so we saw Savannah sparrows and fox sparrows, song sparrows, juncos. It was pretty fun to just see that. And, fox sparrows are a bird that I look for every year. They come through really quickly in spring, and they go further north too. And there's like these somewhat large reddish sparrows. So that was cool. And then as we were there, 6 sandhill cranes were flying. We heard them call in the distance. It's a very distinct call that you should look up online if you've never heard a sandhill crane call. But we heard them call, and we looked up, and there were 6 flying together, pretty low, from north to south over Times Beach. Times Beach is right on the waterfront, it's very open sky. And I've never actually seen a sandhill crane in Erie County. They don't. They'll fly through here. They don't nest here. You see them more in Iroquois, and especially in places like Montezuma and then very far north. But it was cool to see sandhill cranes flying over early morning. It was very calm, and you could just hear their calls echoing.
I know that the Outer Harbor has been very active with birds recently. At the Union Ship Canal, for instance, there was a report of short-eared owls, I believe, and also there's woodcocks that are there in between Tift, and you can see the woodcocks doing their timber doodle thing at dusk. So anyway, for you folks that are staying indoors, we're glad to bring you some of these reports. And if you get outdoors, make sure to isolate and not socialize too much. But there's a lot of bird things going on. And it's an important time to record your observations through eBird and just share your observations through places like the Birds on Niagara Facebook page. So anyway, Jean, thanks for bringing us the reports. Let's talk a little bit about the West New York Land Conservancy. Tell us what the Land Conservancy is and does, and then let's talk about College Lodge, which is one of the special projects that you're working on now.
So I work at the West New York Land Conservancy. We're a not-for-profit land trust. So basically what that means is, we try to protect important wildlife habitat. We protect a lot of farmland, and we always do it. It's voluntary. We're not a government agency. So we find landowners that want to protect their land, and we help them do that. And so, a lot of instances what that looks like is we're buying property that then becomes, we transform those into public nature preserves, trails, or a kayak launch, or, it's a place where you can go all year, hiking, bird watching, skiing, snowshoeing. And so, we protected places like the Stella Niagara Preserve up in Lewiston, Niagara River, which is a great place to open right now if you want to go there. Some trails right on the river, beautiful little meadow and forest and shoreline. We protected, there's a property, a forest that we bought near East Aurora a couple of years ago called the Owensville Sanctuary that has this beautiful little waterfall. And this is a place where you can see Louisiana water thrush nesting in the spring and summer. Not a bird that you can see and find just anywhere. They nest in these little shale ravines. So, go to the Owensville Sanctuary. We are very close to purchasing a property called Mossy Point, which is a 222-acre forest of old growth trees right on Hunters Creek. So it's right adjacent to the Hunters Creek County Park and adjacent to one of our existing nature preserves, Kenny Glen, where my office normally is. And so, we were able to raise enough money. The community really, supported this project, and just, we're only a few weeks away from actually buying it. And then we're going to build a trail system there so people can go there and walk there. And so, our work continues, and it's certainly a weird year, not going to be the easiest year, I imagine. But what we're finding and what we're seeing, obviously, is like, a lot of things are closed. A lot of businesses are closed. Places people normally would do for sort of recreation or just for fun, it's hard to do that now. And so we're just seeing all over Western Europe, people just going outside, going to these beach reserves, going to parks, hiking, walking, biking, and so it's such, I suppose we've heard from a lot of people how important it is to sort of protect these places and, make sure that there's trails that people can go, they can experience it first. That's what we're doing.
Let's talk about College Lodge. I read the piece by Jonathan Titus yesterday, and maybe we'll be lucky to get him on to talk about College Lodge. But it sounds like a really fascinating place, and I want you to tell us about it. One of the things that jumped out at me was that there's freshwater corals there. I might ask Jonathan about it. Maybe you know about it, but tell us about College Lodge and tell us about how we can help.
Yeah, sure. So College Lodge, the College Lodge Forest, I think is one of the most, it's one of the, it really is one of the most incredibly biodiverse places in Western New York. I think it's probably the most interesting place I'll get a chance to work on at the Land Conservancy. We have an opportunity right now to protect this place. So there's a property, it's called the College Lodge Forest. It's near Fredonia. It's in Chautauqua County. So in the 1930s, students from the college at Fredonia use their academic fees, their own money basically, to try to buy this property. And so they protected it in the 1930s during the Great Depression with their own money. So they have a place to go, just to explore nature, get outside, and they protected this property. And right now, the property is owned by the SUNY Fredonia, the Faculty Student Association. They've owned it. There's a lodge there. A lot of people go there. Kids go there, students go there, faculty go there. Hundreds of people do programs there every year. SUNY Fredonia is still a really important part of the campus. But the FSA is, in a sense, it's just hard to maintain this property and with the lodge and the facilities that they've built there. And so at one point in the last few years, they considered logging it. Now the College Lodge Forest has one of the larger patches of old growth forest that you can find in our region. So 400-year-old hemlocks. And the FSA just, they need the money, so they were considering logging it. And fortunately, what they decided to do, instead of logging it to raise the money to then maintain the historic buildings and structures and the trails, they said, could we work with the Land Conservancy? Can we buy the land from them? So that what would happen is they would continue to maintain the building, the historic lodge, the other facilities. We would own 168 acres, all of the forest, a big wetland, miles of trails. And they would be able to use the money to basically help them maintain their part of the property. And we would then maintain the land as a publicly accessible nature preserve. So we have until the end of this year to raise about $790,000, buy the land so that we can then own it and we can steward it and maintain it as a nature preserve. Going forward. Unfortunately, we're already more than halfway there. We definitely need people. We have big grants, a federal grant and a state grant, and a lot of donations from individuals. such an important place for so many people. And but right now we have to raise money. The community has been really supportive and really wants this to happen. And we have between now and the end of this year to raise close to another $400,000. So we need people to donate, and that's what we're doing right now.
So people can go to your website. We'll put the website link up here and learn more about College Lodge, learn more about the West New York Land Conservancy, and donate.
Yeah, and let me tell you a little bit more about the College Lodge. You had asked, what makes this place really interesting? This old growth forest. It's also on this ridge overlooking Lake Erie, so it's a couple miles inland, but it's on this ridge where you can basically, if you drive down along Lake Erie towards Pennsylvania, on the left you'll see these mountains, on the right you see the lake. It's right up top there, and so it's cool because on this property, when it rains, some of that rain will drain into Lake Erie, and some of that rain will drain into the Mississippi River and ultimately the Gulf of Mexico. So it's right on this continental divide where some rain ends up in the Atlantic Ocean, some rain ends up in the Gulf of Mexico. That's really cool. You'd asked about this freshwater coral. So there's this animal called bryozoa. And so in this wetland, this really pristine wetland on the top of this ridge, surrounded by this growth forest, are these colonies of bryozoa. And what they look like is this sort of like gelatinous blob. But it's a colony of a lot of little animals that form these gelatinous blobs. And they're not exactly coral, but they form structures that look like coral. They have these sort of, these gelatinous blobs, these exoskeletons that form. And so that's, a lot of people consider them freshwater coral. And so it's just a symbol that, or you only find these in really pristine wetlands. And, I've never seen anything like it. It's just not something you find in many places. You get incredible birds coming through here, so the birds migrate through here. It's right along the lake, like I said, and so all the songbirds, all the hawks migrate through here. But a lot of interesting birds nest here too. You get hermit thrush, which is a bird that's either nests much further north of boreal forest or much further south along the Appalachians. They nest here. You get both Louisiana water thrush, northern water thrush. Northern water thrush tend to nest much further north in bogs, and Louisiana water thrush tend to nest much further south in shale streams. You get both here. And you also have just incredible wildflowers. So, trillium, all starting to come up now, but orchids too, blankets of pink lady slippers and lots of other species of orchids and native lilies. It really is one of the most incredible places I've ever seen.
Well, I've had the honor of going there. Your mother and I have. You've given us a tour, and it's a really fascinating place, and I appreciate that you're working to preserve that. We're about out of time, and so I'm going to thank you, Jajean Rose Burney, for joining us today. And that's it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.